And that pattern fascinated me really early on. And it's shaped the way how I approach finance, leadership, and problem solving today. Each step taught me something a bit different. So, discipline, judgment, how to navigate financial impacts. But the common thread across all of it has been decision making. Not just making decisions myself, but helping leaders make better ones, using facts and clarity and structure without overcomplicating things. I've worked across revenue, pipeline, cost, balance sheet, capital, cash, the classic CFO toolkit. But at the heart of it, it's really about solving the right problems. And something a bit unique about me is that I've always had one foot in the data and business intelligence world. I'm a big believer in the power of good data, not just because it makes reporting faster, but because it helps the business understand itself. Most decisions today have multiple ripple effects. For me, the most important step is making sure you're solving the right problems, not just chasing data or dashboards. I often think of Albert Einstein's approach. He said, if I had 1 hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. I've adapted that to my work, so I spend 90% of my time understanding the problem and 10% solving it. In practice, I like to bring in human-centered design thinking. So there are lots of tools in this toolkit, really even simple ones that just help get to the heart of the problem. So for example, asking why 5 times can reveal the real root cause behind a challenge and not just the symptoms. Observing how people actually work, so mapping their decision-making journey and empathizing with their pain points ensures that the analytics we deliver will be truly useful. Starting small but strategic, so focusing on decisions that move the business. Now, the key lesson I'd pass on is that resilience isn't just about grit, it's about connection. Being a finance leader can be intense and isolating, but the people around you matter. Peers, mentors, and your team give perspective, help test ideas, and help support when pressure is high. So, investing in those relationships doesn't just help you bounce back, it makes you stronger and a more effective leader.
Hello and welcome to CFO Forum Australia. I'm your host, Amit Arora. In my day job, I work with CFOs to uncover funds in their cost base and unlock capital for the projects they care most about. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Kennedy, most recently CFO at Boston Consulting Group for Australia and New Zealand, a thought leader in data and analytics, and a driving force behind some of Australia's most agile finance teams. Rebecca's journey spans from ground floor audit to leading business intelligence at giants like ANZ and KPMG, all the way to shaping strategy at Boston Consulting Group and building global communities for data leaders. This conversation is for every CFO who has ever felt the pressure to deliver real value, not just numbers. Rebecca's story is one of the transformations, navigating complexity, human challenges, and finding clarity through data. Let's step into the war room, not the webinar, and hear how she's turning financial insights into sustainable growth. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of the CFO Forum Australia.
I'm as excited as you are. Maybe I'm more excited. Let me tell you the truth. Your career began in trenches of audit and treasury before stepping into major roles in banking and consulting. Was there a moment when you realized finance was less about spreadsheets and more about people and influence?
The turning point was just realizing that decisions weren't made in Excel. They were made in conversations. And that changed how I approached everything. I've worked in finance for nearly 20 years now across businesses of all shapes and sizes, and my path hasn't been linear. It's taken me through the 10 years in banking, FMCG, and for the last 4 years, I've been a CFO and head of finance in professional services. What stands out for me is that I've worked in organizations with incredibly capable people, and yet often I've seen decisions and actions not being as effective as they could have been. Not because anyone lacks the skills or the insights, but because priorities aren't clear or aligned. And that pattern fascinated me really early on, and it's shaped the way how I approach finance, leadership, and problem solving today. Each step taught me something a bit different. So, discipline, judgment, how to navigate financial impacts. But the common thread across all of it has been decision making. Not just making decisions myself, but helping leaders make better ones, using facts and clarity and structure without overcomplicating things. I've worked across revenue, pipeline, cost, balance sheet, capital, cash, the classic CFO toolkit. But at the heart of it, it's really about solving the right problems. And something a bit unique about me is that I've always had one foot in the data and business intelligence world. I'm a big believer in the power of good data, not just because it makes reporting faster, but because it helps the business understand itself. Most decisions today have multiple ripple effects. So having that information that's like fast and reliable and easy to get to has never been more important. Along the way, I've been lucky to work with some incredible leaders. They weren't just technically strong, they were adaptable and empathetic and grounded. They had this quiet influence that didn't overpower a room, but shaped it. And they had this mix of strategic instinct and emotional intelligence that made everything around them better. Now, they're the type of leaders who stay with you. And to be honest, that's what I hope to be known for too. In terms of how my brain works, for those that know the HBDI model, I'm yellow green, which is a pretty rare combination. The yellow is the creative, big picture, strategic side. And then the green is that like practical, structured, get it done side. And it's probably why I thrive with ambiguity, would make an awesome entrepreneur, and also why I can't bake cakes. As a as a leader, I care probably more than I admit. I care deeply about my team and my stakeholders and the people who rely on finance to make good decisions. One quote that always sticks with me by Maya Angelou is that people may forget what you said or did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Outside of work, I need something that resets my brain. And for me, that's rock climbing. I picked it up a few years ago and it's actually improved my problem solving at work. Climbing is basically decision making under pressure. So you plan, you attempt, you fail, you try again, and you adjust. So every route is a physical puzzle and it teaches resilience in a really, really tangible way.
Wow, wow. There's a lot that is so impressive in everything that you said. And there's a lot that I can follow up on. But let me ask you this. Can you recall a time perhaps at ANZ or KPMG where a big project's biggest challenge was not technical, but it was more human? What did you learn from leading through that challenge?
Yeah. At KPMG, one of the areas I led was the firm wide revenue budgeting process. So technically, it wasn't heavy, not in the same way as my days back at ANZ Bank in global markets, and it wasn't about complex products. The complexity came from the sheer scale of people involved. We were budgeting over across a million intersecting points, right? In a client product sector matrix. One year it was all done in Excel. The next year we achieved our goal to automate the entire process. And that shift was a game changer. But honestly, the tech wasn't the hardest part. The real challenge was the humans. There were more than 200 stakeholders involved, mainly client lead partners, sector leaders, industry leaders, divisional leaders, each with their own priorities, pressures, and views of what their year should look like. It was a classic top down meets bottom up exercise. Leadership sets the targets, partners build the plans, and I sit in the middle making all of the parts add up while still aligning to KPMG's strategy and the realities of the market. And that's where the learning came in. I realized very quickly that this wasn't about spreadsheets. It was about alignment, influence, and communication. It taught me how to navigate senior stakeholders with competing agendas and keep everyone moving in the same direction. It taught me to translate strategy into numbers in a way that people actually bought into. It taught me to run a process that was both disciplined and diplomatic, because the moment that people feel railroad, that quality of focus drops. And it taught me to build trust, which in budgeting often matters more than the budget itself. So, yes, the system improved, but the biggest shift was for me learning that leading a complex project is 10% technical and 90% orchestrating humans.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can completely appreciate that. Having worked as a change manager across multiple projects, I can clearly see what you're saying. It's a difficult job dealing with so many different expectations from such a diverse set of stakeholders. And while you're in the middle of all of these people, it can also often get lonely. In fact, the CFO role has often been described as the loneliest seat at the table. Have you ever felt isolated in making tough calls, and how did you find your way through that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are moments in any senior finance role where you feel like you're the only one holding the full picture. You're across the numbers and the risk and the strategy, the people impacts. And sometimes it means you have to make a call that no one else fully sees yet. And that can feel isolating. What got me through was building a campfire circle. So, a small group of trusted peers outside of my direct line who I could pressure test thinking. So, not advisors, not formal committees, just people who could tell me the truth without politics. And it taught me something important, that the CFO might be lonely if you sit there alone, but it's never meant to be a solo act. You have to build your own ecosystem of support and not wait for it to appear.
Yep. Thank you. No, I completely agree with you. You've also helped shape business intelligence functions at multiple major organizations. What's the single biggest mistake companies make when building data teams, and how do you avoid it?
Yeah, the biggest mistake that companies make when building data teams is treating them like a technical function rather than a strategic integrating one. A lot of organizations focus on tools and dashboards, but the real value of data comes from the data team, comes from how well they're connected across the whole business. If they sit in a silo, you end up with a beautiful Power BI report that never shifts behavior. And for me, the first principle is integration across finance, people, risk, legal, marketing, operations, like all of it. Modern decisions rarely live in one lane. Every choice has ripple effects. And so data only becomes powerful when it's fast and reliable and stitched together across all of those support functions. And for a data team to achieve that, they need a genuine seat at the executive table, not as observers, but as contributors who understand the strategic context, the trade offs, and then the pressures behind those decisions. Without that context, even the best technical work lands flat. So let me ground this with a finance example. As the CFO, my real job is to protect the organization's runway, credibility, and strategic options. So when I'm working with a leadership team, my brain naturally runs through a checklist. Is this seasonal? Is it sustainable, right? Seasonal or one off? Where are we exposed? Could be FX, cost base, customer mix, working capital. How much time do we have to react? So what's volatile and uncertain? And what choices does this actually give us? A strong data team takes all of those questions, the ones that leaders are juggling constantly with, and makes those answers faster, clearer, and more reliable. I've seen hours cut from decision cycles because of tight data governance. I've seen automation turn powerful, painful manual processes into something more effortless. And I've also seen brilliant technical work fail simply because it wasn't communicated in business language or aligned with the strategic story. And that's the real unlocked. High performing data teams doesn't just produce the insights, they translate it, integrate it, and elevate the thinking across all support functions. So when you break out of silos and build this holistic view of the business, data stops being a reporting exercise and starts becoming a strategic advantage.
You've been driving data transformation across your career. How do you ensure data initiatives actually deliver hard measurable outcomes, real cost savings, not just dashboards and reports for people to look at.
One of the biggest challenges that I see in both finance and data teams is KPI overload. Every team wants their metric on a dashboard. Every leader wants a real-time view of something. And before you know it, you've built Times Square. Bright, noisy, impressive, but impossible to navigate. And the truth is, when everything is a priority, nothing is. So I've learned that clutter almost always comes from uncertainty. So when people aren't clear on what really drives performance, they track everything because it feels like a safety net. So now I strip KPIs back to a simple framework. First, decision driving KPIs. These are the ones that trigger real action. They stay front and center. They're tied to cost, risk, revenue, customer movement, just levers we can actually pull. The second is the monitoring KPIs. So they're important to watch, but not urgent, and they belong in the background, not on the executive dashboard. And then three, the vanity KPIs. Interesting, but they never change a decision. So these get moved out entirely. And once you declutter, clarity appears quickly, and with clarity comes accountability. But focusing the dashboard is only half the story. To turn data into measurable outcomes, you need these three things. So start with a business case, not the tech. So every data initiative I run begins with two questions. What decision will this change? And what dollar outcome will that deliver? If we can't answer those up front, we stop. No dashboards for the sake of dashboards. Secondly, tie the data directly to financial levers so that the moment a data team does understand the margin, the working capital, customer lifetime value, or the cost to serve, everything shifts. And then the insights become actionable because they're connected to real money moving through the business. And then thirdly, build measurement on the project itself. So I assist on a before and after view. So baseline, savings, hours reduced, risk mitigated. This is where the finance team have a superpower, which is focus. We can narrow the field, cut through the noise, and link data to real financial impact. And environments where everyone is overwhelmed by information, focus isn't just discipline, it becomes a competitive advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, on that, sometimes in the middle of the project, there are maybe signals that things are not going right. What are the signals that a data driven project is at risk of becoming more like a tick box exercise? And how do you intervene to shift the culture or direction in that project?
You can tell a data project is turning into a tick box exercise when it's all about the outputs, not the outcomes. So dashboards are built, reports are delivered, but no decisions are changing. So stakeholders can't articulate how they're actually using the insights, and everything is treated as a priority, and conversations drift into technical detail instead of business impact. To intervene, I focus on three things. Reconnect back to the decisions. So we ask, what choice will this data change and which metric will it move? Simplify and focus. So cut any unnecessary dashboards and KPIs so that the team can deliver high impact insights. And then translate that into business terms. So show exactly how the data links to the runway, the margin, or the risk so that leaders can engage and act. Ultimately, a data project succeeds when it drives action, not just reports.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Now, your work has championed both agility as well as simplicity. Can you walk us through a time when business change or decision led
Sure.
to tangible business impact?
Yeah. One of my most recent examples come from my time as CFO for Boston Consulting Group, Australia and New Zealand. This year, our finance team undertook one of the most significant transformations a finance function can experience, and that's migrating our accounting system from one to another. And it wasn't just a lift and shift. It touched every corner of how we operated, including changing the revenue recognition methodology, to changing bank accounts to enable to enable the global cash pooling, to changing the accounts payable system and interface, and also changing our general ledger, customer, and project hierarchies. The tangible impacts, were significant, from better cash management to better contract management to better pricing decisions. The biggest lesson is that true agility doesn't come from doing more. It comes from simplifying processes so that the organization can move faster, act smarter, and create real business impact.
So, for CFOs trying to get more from, let's say, analytics, what practical first steps do you recommend, especially when budgets or buy in are limited?
For me, the most important step is making sure you're solving the right problems, not just chasing data or dashboards. I often think of Albert Einstein's approach. He said, if I had 1 hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. I've adapted that to my work, so I spend 90% of my time understanding the problem and 10% solving it. In practice, I like to bring in human centered design thinking. So there are lots of tools in this toolkit, really even simple ones that just help get to the heart of the problem. So, for example, asking why 5 times can reveal the real root cause behind a challenge and not just the symptoms. Observing how people actually work. So, mapping their decision making journey and empathizing with their pain points ensures that the analytics we deliver will be truly useful. Starting small but strategic. So, focusing on decisions that move the business, so cash management, pricing, margin, customer retention, and mapping out what information you actually need to make those decisions. Once that problem is clear, even limited budgets can be used effectively to build those pipelines and dashboards and simple analytics that have immediate impact. You'll find that the small wins demonstrate value, they build credibility, and they create buy-in for bigger initiatives. In the past, I've used lots of different human-centered design tools. With my teams, I don't explicitly call it out as, hey, we're going to use HCD today. I've learnt to try and make it more organic and really natural to the situation. Admittedly, I've had some people like really curious and interested and wanting to learn more, and then others that roll their eyes. But look, one of my favorites was bringing in a professional sketch artist to sketch out the discussions that we were having on how the team was dealing with the change that they were going through versus how they actually wanted to deal with it. And at the end, we had this fantastic poster to put up on the wall. It was tangible, it was visual, and we could use that when things were getting really tough. And what I really loved about it was how they loved it. So with HCD, the principle is simple but powerful. Spend most of your effort defining the problem, use the right tools to understand it deeply, and the solution then almost solves itself. So that's how analytics will become like a true lever for business, not just a technical exercise.
Yeah, I think what you gave us there were some really good gold nuggets for engagement, for making the experience of uh, people in your organization better and bringing them along. And what you shared about kind of not using terminology like human-centered design, and not causing jargon fatigue. I think those are excellent. That's an advice I think everybody can take from our listeners to the CFOs out there. Thank you for sharing that. Now let me kind of change gears and talk more about change. You touched upon the human aspects of it. The pace of change is kind of relentless and it's increasing. How do you personally stay grounded and maintain perspective as the CFO keeps expanding?
One of the biggest challenges for me, and I think for many leaders, is staying focused when everything feels urgent. In a CFO role, your attention becomes currency and everyone wants a piece of it. So if you stay in reactive mode all day, the things that truly move the needle never get touched. I've had weeks booked in back to backs, and it takes real courage to make hard choices about where to spend your time. A recent highlight for me was a session with Steve Vamos through Masterminds, where he spoke about the courage required to make tough decisions. And that was incredibly grounding. It reminded me of moments I faced where negotiating contracts where the governance and economics and customer relationships intersected, or leading change initiatives that affected the sustainability and culture. Those experiences reinforce the importance of staying anchored to keep perspective and maintain impact. I focus on three things: clarifying priorities, so quickly distinguishing what truly matters versus what feels urgent, evaluating the trade offs. So every yes has a cost, so deliberate decisions are critical, and then acting with focus. So carving out that dedicated time where it has the biggest impact, even if it means saying no to the rest. But ultimately, staying grounded is about remembering that the CFO role is less about being busy and more about making decisions that shape the business over the long term. By anchoring myself to those priorities, trade offs, and focused action, I ensure that I'm driving impact rather than just reacting to the pace of change.
Yep. And what's your advice to the CFOs who want to foster a growth mindset in their teams, but are still held back by legacy ways of working?
Yeah. My advice is to start off by creating the conditions where experimentation and learning is safe, visible, and rewarded. Legacy processes often hold back teams, not because people are unwilling, but because the systems and expectations and past experiences reinforce a don't fail behavior. And I've seen this firsthand. In one team, people were reluctant to embrace a new approach because in a previous role, they'd been yelled at for making a mistake. And that kind of experience stays with you, and that can quietly shape how people respond to change. For CFOs, this means leading by example. So challenge the assumptions, question the existing processes, and reward experiments just as much as the results. Break the entrenched processes into manageable pilots. So test a new report, automate a repetitive task, trial a new decision framework so that the team can see tangible results really quickly and safely. Another critical lever is clarifying purpose. So people are more willing to stretch when they understand the why and how a new approach will improve decision making, free up that capacity, and create real business impact. Pair that with coaching, knowledge mindset, removing unnecessary bureaucracy, and you start to build a culture where growth mindset isn't just aspirational, it becomes the way that a team operates. And then finally, remembering that shifting culture is gradual, small wins compound, one innovative solution, one improved process, or the moment of visible learning can start to break down legacy behaviors and make growth the default mindset.
As someone who builds and leads communities, both at work and beyond, what's the one lesson you would pass on to a rising finance leader about resilience and connection?
Now, the key lesson I'd pass on is that resilience isn't just about grit, it's about connection. Being a finance leader can be intense and isolating, but the people around you matter. Peers, mentors, and your team give perspective, help test ideas, and help support when pressure is high. So, investing in those relationships doesn't just help you bounce back, it makes you stronger and a more effective leader.
Yes. So, looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of finance, and what should CFOs be preparing for right now?
What excites me most about the future of finance is the opportunity to blend technology with deeply human skills. AI and advanced analytics will transform how we work, automating reporting, fast forecasting, and data heavy tasks, but they won't replace the uniquely human abilities that drive impact. So those skills will outlast every tool. They're the ones that make finance meaningful. Having a growth mindset to adapt and learn continuously, creativity to find new solutions, complex problem solving to frame the problems so clearly that they demand action, and communication that cuts through the noise to highlight what really matters, and the ability to be collaborative and easy to work with. The CFO of the CFO of the future and the finance team won't just be stewards of numbers, they'll be translators of complexity, turning noise into clarity, clarity into action, and action into measurable results. So, yeah, for CFOs preparing today, the focus should be building on these human capabilities alongside the tech adoption, invest in coaching, culture, decision focused analytics, and ensure your teams are empowered to use tools strategically rather than operationally. That combination will define the next generation of future leaders.
Wow. I think I loved this conversation. Those were all the questions that I had today. I loved every bit of this conversation. A lot of it was very inspiring. Also, it was very rejuvenating in a way for somebody who's coming from a change management background. Hearing a leader talk about engaging communities in the way you did was extremely inspiring. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today and for sharing your learnings with us. I'm sure our viewers would love every bit of what you have shared with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Amit. Really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of your podcast and the community that you're building with the CFO Forum Australia.
Thank you. As I said, the pleasure is all ours. Thank you.